It's time now to do some analysis. I just want to begin, Jan Jube. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You are so much part of us now. We don't even forget. We even forget to greet you properly.
It's like
you've been here for a couple of days, crunching the numbers for us, the predictions and everything else. We are here today just before the announcement of the final results. Okay, we're seeing the NFP there saying that it won 7 but not 6, and they're taking the IEC to court. It wants to interdict the results. What insights can you share with us at this stage about this matter that's developing in KZN?
Yes, Dan, thank you so much. In this case, the NFP is going to court to overturn the result in one ward in the Edumbe municipality, that's Paul Petersburg and the areas around it. It's in the north of the province. Now, the reason why they're going to court, which is the correct way if you are unhappy, is that they say there's a miscount of that and the proportional vote. Why it is important to them is it's the only municipality where they've really done well. But if they are correct, the numbers are so close, they can have an overall majority. They are going the right route. Whether they're correct or not, the court will find, and in the end, the recount will find. There's one matter that will decide it to a very large degree, whether they even have a case. Did their party agents sign the results slip in those contested areas? If it is signed by their party agent, they're going to struggle. If not, we're going to see a long battle for those votes.
So we're going to have to wait and see first what's going to happen in court today, and then those processes must follow. Okay, let's turn our attention now to Mr. Julius Malema, the head of the EFF, making a surprise announcement today, a little bit earlier, at the National Results Centre in Pretoria, that the EFF would be willing to talk to anyone about forming coalitions. Now, you are our analyst. You are here now. Can we first, before we speak, listen to what Mr. Malema had to say a little earlier?
In light of the fact that there were no outright winners in different municipalities, the EFF will engage with all political parties that will approach us to talk about constitute government in different municipalities. The political parties that approach us must know that the first item on the agenda before sharing of positions will be the commitment to the people. Anyone who comes to the EFF must come with a clear agenda of land redistribution, water provision, jobs, sanitation and care of disabled people. We are willing to listen to everyone and will take decision on coalition only when we are satisfied that they will lead to the total upliftment of our people and defeating poverty. The nature and form of how these conditions will be constituted will be discussed with different political parties and will be under the constant guidance of members of the EFF, communities where coalitions will happen, and central command team.
Okay, help us and our viewers understand, what is Mr. Malema's message, for example, to the likes of the ANC, the Patriotic Alliance, the Action SA, the DA, whoever else that he says we're willing to talk to everyone? What is he saying? What does it mean?
Well, he is giving different messages to each of them, and in all those cases, there's a short-term message and a long-term message. Let's see what he says to the Democratic Alliance. He says to the Democratic Alliance, I'm open for business. Now, the DA sits in a terrible position. There are many paths for the DA whose voters voted to not be governed by the ANC in dozens of municipalities. The path to unseat the ANC and rid that municipality of the ANC in many, many cases runs through the EFF. Without the EFF, the DA cannot form an alternative government. He is saying the door is open. Now the DA sits with a massive problem. Because it painted itself into a corner as far as the EFF is concerned, it must now choose between those communities, and they are long-suffering communities. I'm thinking of the Lekwataimani municipality in Christiana, all the way through to Nelson Mandela Bay, which you guys unpacked just now. The question here is, do these politicians decide that the voters of those communities first and foremost wanted to rid themselves of the ANC? If so, they're going to have to eat a big pie on which we write humble. Right? Humble pie will have to be eaten. If they break their campaign promise to never, ever, 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 ever work with the EFF, if they break that promise, they're done for in 2024, those politicians who made that promise. The DA is in a terrible fix. His message to Action SA was, we will give Mr. Mashaba the mayoralty of Johannesburg if it is up to us, but he must know he's going to have to listen to us. So he's putting himself in a position of power. His message to the ANC is twofold. Firstly, he says, we must make the elephant smaller. This is consistent with the EFF's message since its inception that it is out to destroy the African National Congress, not to work with it. And it hasn't worked with it. So he tells that to the ANC. At the same time, he says, oh, but we know that the ANC is having an internal fight, and these clowns, to quote him, who are challenging the president, they will lose, so we will then eat them in 2024. He divides the ANC along those lines, where he says, well, you know, you go with Ramaphosa, we will beat you, and therefore inflames the fight which is coming in the ANC in the policy conference June next year and the national conference coming up in December.
Those comments are very interesting, but has the EFF been consistent in its approach?
Largely in the matter of strategy and tactics. Why he was, I think, so relaxed is that what he said there is entirely consistent with what they did in 2016 and what the People's Plenary, which is their equivalent to a national conference or a national whatever, it's their big meeting which they had at Nasrec end of 2019. They took that decision. So he's not even, he's trying to stop infighting in the EFF for people who have the eyes on positions.
Okay, coalition governments, hung councils. Where could the EFF have a very strong hand to play kingmakers? Currently, from what you've been looking at, the numbers, what you're seeing. I know the seats are still being finalized in other parts, in big metros.
Well, Dan, as I said, it's a large number of councils. My colleague Wayne Sussman is better at the composition of councils, and he will correct me if I'm wrong, because you've put me on the spot a bit. But I think it will run from places like the Steve Tshwete municipality in Middelburg, through Metsimaholo in Sasolburg, through to Matlosana in Klerksdorp, all the way through to Nelson Mandela Bay, all across the country, difficult decisions to be made.
Okay. Now, the KwaZulu-Natal results, we just had them as well a little while earlier. We saw the ANC provincial leadership. As I said myself, Sikhe Zegalala was like honest, refreshing to say, guys, we've angered people. People are disappointed at us. We need to look at ourselves. We're still going to analyze the results, but there's a lot of humble pie there being eaten, so to speak. We even saw it yesterday. What's the impact of these KwaZulu-Natal results, the way they are now, on the African National Congress?
Well, it follows on the craftiness of Mr. Malema here, because now Mr. Zikalala must tell us why the people are angry with him. Is it because of poor service delivery? Is it because of the national leadership? Is it because of the way Mr. Zuma was treated? That's precisely the kind of wedge that the opponents of the ANC want to drive into the ANC, be they the EFF, the DA, anyone else. You'll hear the same theme. So, fascinating situation. But the situation for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is that it has lost control of each and every municipality of big economic importance in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's run through it, except for the Reinkonyeni Council in Port Shepstone. That is where they still have a majority. But they have lost eThekwini's majority in Durban. They've lost Umzanduzi, which is Pietermaritzburg. They've lost the Umchezi Council in Estcourt. They've lost, this is control of the Alfred Duma Council in Ladysmith. They've lost Newcastle. They've lost Abakulusi, which is Vryheid. They've lost Umhlatuzi, which is Richards Bay. Now, if you are the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, you were in power in Durban, Pietermaritzburg, Estcourt, Ladysmith, Newcastle, Vryheid, and Richards Bay. You've lost all of them. What do you say to yourself?
What do you say to your members? It's fascinating as you are naming these big economic hubs and centers of KwaZulu-Natal, where the ANC used to have control. Now they've dropped below the required amount of control. You wonder what is likely to happen next. Because whom does the buck stop with as well?
Well, the buck is the important thing, is it not? I mean, there's this whole book which Greg Arday wrote on the buck, which is the money in these municipalities, the patronage networks that are now under threat. We know the infighting, which is murderous in the ANC KwaZulu-Natal. Everything is now under pressure. The opposition parties are looking and they are thinking. The ANC must also do thinking. Yes, introspection to itself, but now it doesn't have the luxury of only introspection. It's also a matter of how do you deal with these people whom you have treated in this way for such a long time.
And what's the future going to be like? And when I talk about the future, you mentioned the ANC's upcoming policy conference next year, plus the national conference in December 2022. And that's just around the corner towards the general election of 2024. And I think opposition parties will also have an eye on what more can they chip away from the big elephant. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch the next few weeks. But we're still waiting then for those final results this afternoon to be declared by the IEC. Jan, thank you very much. Earlier with Wayne, we were talking about the numbers of Ekurhuleni and Nelson Mandela Bay. You see the role there of the EFF is going to be playing.
There's no path to power without the EFF. But now the EFF is saying, and this is important, they only go into coalitions if the parties agree to the 7 non-negotiable pillars of the EFF, which on land would mean complete nationalisation of all land. I mean, it's hugely unlikely that any major opposition, other party, ANC, DA, IFP would agree to that. They're all opposed to it. But the pressure that puts within the ANC to move to the EFF position is massive. So, Dan, we're not going to solve this problem here today, and we're not even going to understand it completely. But when we ask the question, I think we are asking the question which will set the tone for next year. It's a dynamic situation. No one can predict the future, but my word, has this election changed the political landscape of our country?
Watershed election.
Wow.
Watershed, in many respects. Jan Jube will continue, of course, giving us some more analysis here on eNCA. And as the numbers get finalized and announced, it's going to become even clearer what kind of a watershed election this 2021 municipal vote has been.